appreciate being the last person between you and drinks. So, good. Great, we're all set. Let me frame this up a little bit, and Mike did a great introduction for me before, but this will be, I think, important to the storyline. So I've been doing product management in Silicon Valley since 1988. Some of you weren't born yet. For context, that was about 2 years after fire was discovered and 2 years before electricity. Since about 2001, I've been what we might call a product leader, which is somebody who manages teams of product management folks and often designers and other people in there. And over the last decade or so, I've done a series of what we call SMOKEJUMPER VP product or chief product officer jobs. So I drop into primarily software companies that have forgotten to have someone in charge of the product function. Usually that's not a call they wanted to make, but here we are. Keeps me busy and in trouble. What's important about that is I've sort of moved up the stack from actually managing individual products to trying to keep the thing held together. And what I see the product leader job mostly is the person who makes it possible for the individual product managers actually to succeed. So while product managers manage products, the product lead or the VP of product, whatever, is more or less managing the executive team. For me, that's a lot of marriage counseling between the sales side of the house and the engineering side of the house, which we'll get into. Good. So let's dive in, and here's the 3 points I'm going to make. So it's all the giveaways right there. So for me, it's so obviously clear, particularly in enterprise companies, because we're going to focus on the B2B enterprise here, away from the consumer a little bit. You may know none of you have an engineering team as big as you need or want. There will always be inevitable conflicts, and we're going to dive into that. And I will claim that the different functional groups in your enterprise software company actually want different things. It's not just that about personalities. It's not that the salespeople hate you, although they might, right? It's that, in fact, we have dissimilar, misaligned goals across the functional groups, and depending on who's got more leverage, may decide what gets into the product plan. Second point to make, I think, is algorithms are great, and most of us came up through the technical or engineering side of the house. We have this belief that smarter people win, that my algorithm is bigger than your algorithm, and if I lead someone through my logical conclusions, which usually takes 2 to 6 hours, they will see my light, they will see my brilliance, and they will agree that I've gotten to the right answer, which is fine for this small set of folks who subscribe to the engineering product view of data wins, but again, we'll take that apart. And then, how do we get here? We'll talk a little bit about incentives across the organization, particularly, again, enterprise software companies, to map out why this isn't about individuals. Often we personalize this. You know, that executive doesn't like me, so-and-so, they didn't take me out for drinks, whatever it is. I'm going to try to paint this as a systemic, structural, organizational issue that is pretty universal. And for the consumer side folks, maybe you'll see some familiar stories here too. We good? All right. First, a little bit of economics because it helps to set this up. And apologies, I know there's a bunch of folks here who've sat in on various of my classes over at DIT. So I've been coming here for the last 8 years to do a little teaching there. So I was there on Saturday, and they've seen the next couple of these. But here we go. If we think about development costs, and we're going to take Dan's ROI and turn it on its head for just a moment. If I've got a development team of, and it depends where they are, but let's call it something between 6 and 9 people, what does that cost per year to my company? Nearest one digit, right? I'll call it €1 million, right? Might be a little less, might be a little more, but to the first approximation, if I have a team working with me on some stuff, and I'm going to have them all year, let's call it €1 million. Right? More or less, I'm sure your CFO somewhere can get it down to 9 decimal places, but it doesn't matter, right? Presumably, I'm going to have them working on important stuff, right? And I think most of today was about validation and the need to get out ahead of the engineering and build cycle to be learning. If I'm at a software company of any size, in fact, it turns out that there's an implied revenue commitment. which is that most medium to big software companies don't actually spend most of their money on building product. They spend most of it on selling and marketing and real estate and benefits and trips for the sales team to wherever President's Club is on some beautiful island with lots of alcohol. And I don't know what happens there because they don't invite me. But if you unpack an Oracle or a Microsoft or some other big company, what you find out is they spend about $1 out of $6 or €1 out of €6, whatever currency we're in, on actually building product. And the rest of it's spent on everything else they do. Therefore, if my team spends €1 million this year building something, we've made an informal promise to the head of our financial organization to bring in about €6 million worth of revenue. Now, it doesn't all work out, which means on the failures I've got to deliver more. And if it's a 2-year uptake, I have 12 million I own next year. But if we're not delivering something on the order of 5 or 6 million euros for every million euros we spend, our shareholders are unhappy, or our hoped for pre-IPO shareholders are unhappy. And usually they're relatively vocal about how they feel with my CEO. So we know this is happening. But in the software business, and this is maybe more important, the incremental cost per unit, per user, per transaction, per seat, whatever it is that you're selling, better be pretty darn small. So once we've hit break even, we get to print a lot of money because we've amortized the fixed cost of our team over getting it done. And now every new user, every new transaction, every new e-commerce, every new airline ticket we sell, whatever, it's essentially 100% margin. It's free money because we've paid off the team, as long as we don't have to create something new for every customer. Right? If we're doing that, by the way, we're in the professional services business, which is a great business to be in. But we're going to knock that down in just a second. So the goal here for a software company isn't to minimize costs. We don't want cheaper developers and more junior designers because they're less expensive. We actually want the folks who are going to build us the most wonderful stuff so we can sell an awful lot of it and make more money. As a MBA way back in the day, the phrase "make more money" seemed to be really important. Okay, good. So summarizing that, because a few of you in the audience are old enough to remember what this picture is from, right? In the software business, we're not trying to save money. We're trying to make money, and all the money is made on the nth copy, the nth subscriber, the nth transaction, the nth whatever it is. We never get to charge for the first unit all of our costs. We got to get past break even, and then it's all money. Right? So again, this would seem obvious to everyone who's in a consumer space. You're not going to build a special Fitbit for just one user. You're not going to create a special dating app that swipes up and down instead of left and right just because this one person wants it. In the consumer space, we understand that we have to sell hundreds of thousands or millions of something to make money. And we're perfectly happy to set aside some of those crazy outlier, couldn't we just add teleportation into your product kind of things, because we're consumer folks. Again, we're going to blow that up a little bit in the enterprise where we get in just a sec. Last one here. I don't know if you guys know about the good idea train. Okay, if you're a product manager, I bet every time you sit down to read your email, your Slack, the set of Post-it notes that somebody walked over and put on your screen, there's 57 other channels, right? The folks who brought you those ideas had this weird assumption that we're short of ideas. And that we product managers love the people who bring us ideas because we're short of ideas. And we're sitting around waiting for somebody to tell us what might be a good thing. And our team as well are sitting around waiting for someone to bring us a really good idea, right? So from the donor side of this, from the folks bringing these really good ideas, and they come from everybody, especially the sales team, which is where we're going to go next. It's completely obvious to everyone who brings us one idea today that it is a great idea, it's a beautiful idea, it's a perfect idea, and they've completely forgotten what else we're working on anyway. So there must be, because it's a good idea, there must be people to work on it. Right now, we live in the alternate reality. I usually talk about the and universe and the or universe. So the and universe is everybody who brings you a thing and they say, oh, I know there's stuff in the roadmap or whatever we're calling it. And can't we do this one more thing, right? And we as product folks live in the exclusive or universe where if we want to do one more new thing, we have to take something of similar or larger size out. But that's never in the heads of anyone who brings us an idea because, gosh, they thought of it in the shower or they were on with a customer on a phone, whatever. It's a really good idea. And they are thinking about an absolute, is it a good idea or not? Interesting question, not the question I care about. The question I care about is it a sufficiently better idea that we're willing to put everything else that we were going to validate on hold for a few weeks or a few months to validate your good idea? Or if it's even better, because it came from the CEO, we're going to skip the validation step and go right into design. Because, right? But there's something we're going to not do instead, and the person with this idea in their head, nobody remembers the existence of our plan except us in these conversations. That's really important. Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit and say, in the course of my day, and I'm sure in all of your days, a lot of people came up to me in some virtual or physical way with a really good idea. Who are they and what were their biases as to what idea they had? So let's think about organizations, because I live in the how do we design organizations problem. When we talk to our customer support or our tech support team, lots of things they want us to do, and they almost always are asking for us to do what? Anybody? Say louder. Bug fixing, exactly right. So they are faced with all the folks, their sampling bias, support people, they only talk to current customers, and they only talk to customers, forgive my French, who are really pissed off, right? And who think that that's a big enough issue that they're going to pick up the phone or write a ticket or whatever your input system is. And so our tech support team, our customer support team, is brilliant, and I love them, and they're terrific, and they are deeply biased toward small improvements to the current product that a lot of people complain about. If, by the way, you open up your backlog for some kind of voting process where all of your current users get to vote in, this is what they come from, right? Everybody wants the one thing fixed that was annoying at this very moment. Customer success and onboarding, so if you're in the enterprise space, usually after we take the purchase order, there's a lot of work to do before the customers get any value. Plumbing and installation, and by the way, the on-premise software is not gone. It's still around. So customer success and onboarding teams tend to have a different set of things, which is all of the weird stuff that didn't work as well in the installation as the sales team promised during the sales cycle, right? We all been here, right? They've got a special database, they've got a thing, right? They need this little one connector, how hard could it be, right? Inside sales, if you're doing something in large volume, you have an inside sales or telesales. These are actually the folks I believe the most, because their job is to get somebody off the phone quickly if they're not going to buy and move on to the next. So they really understand volume, and they understand targeting and segmenting and qualification. Generally, what I hear from my inside sales and my telesales folks is, on the one hand, our freemium product was really good, and I wish it weren't because not enough people are upgrading. And then the second thing I hear is our freemium product's really not very good, and so we can't get anybody to stay long with us to upgrade. And then you've got this general set of things on the website that's not specific enough for this one customer. I'm talking to someone in pharmaceutical research. Don't we have a whole stack of references for pharmaceutical research? And the next call is from somebody in aerospace testing, right? Good. All good. We're getting to the hard part here. Enterprise sales. Anybody here who's been in enterprise sales before I get in deep trouble? Okay. Let me say before I go any further, I love my enterprise sales teams, and I'm not at all bitter that they get paid twice what I get paid. But they're different than we are. If we come from the engineering product side of the world, we have a whole worldview that is dramatically different from how our enterprise sales folks think and behave. So enterprise sales teams are always pushing us for. Mostly they only have one or two customers they're calling on. Mostly those one or two customers had some things that the customer claims are really easy, right? And so they're answering the outlier feature request. They're answering the competitor gave them a data sheet which has all these crazy features on it which don't work, right? There were some IBM folks I saw here who understand that FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? And there's this perennial, daily point of view from sales that engineering and product can't get anything shipped on time. And you already heard about taking the dates off the roadmap, but this is a general point of view. And again, we're going to unpack this and see what it is. Engineering, what does engineering spot most and want us to invest in? Tech debt, that's right. So all of the things that make engineering's life difficult are the things they want to fix first. And they're not wrong, but they would like to spend 100% of our engineering budget on engineering stuff. And again, I'm old. If anybody else is old enough to remember what the last punch card in the stack was labeled? Okay, not enough. It had these letters, EOJ, which stood for end of job, which is what happens when engineering works 100% on fixing technical debt and your customers don't get what they want. Okay, executive team? Anybody? All right, so shiny objects, it's almost always the shiny object. They read something from Gartner that said machine learning is where all we're going, right? Maybe, Bitcoin, right? Blockchain, right? There's a thing. What are we doing about blockchain? I don't know, let's get, right? And it's almost always, can I attach extra revenue to that feature we're already building? Because then we can capture some more revenue on that one feature. And the next time my board of directors calls, I can say something better than the last thing I said. Good, okay. We're good so far? So now let's mix this and give you a picture of what I think is a typically reasonable investment plan or budget for enterprise software. So here's a pie chart. By the way, pie charts have a mystically wonderful feature, which is, this may not be obvious, if you want to make one slice of the pie bigger, you have to make some other slice of the pie smaller. Okay? This is why executives don't like pie charts. We like bar charts because if we put more pages on, we can make it taller. All right, so if I walk around the circle here and say, what would and by the way, I'm thinking here, post-market fit. So we're not in the experiment stage. We're a little past there. Everybody's going to have a different pie, but let's do it. The blue slice, I think, it's all the stuff that our users and our customers actually ask for. New features, new reports, whatever. There's that infinitely long list of stuff that you correctly put in your backlog and said, yes, that's a great idea. Let me put that in position 845 where it belongs, right? But we're going to spend about half of our engineering weeks, story points, strawberries, whatever it is, on things that customers are visibly asking for or that we anticipate that they're going to see and love, right? We'll see what the rest of it is. Next slice is all the illities. Customers don't call us up and tell us to spend more on security unless we've really screwed up. Right? They don't call us up and say, you need more capacity in your cloud thing, whatever that is, because one, they don't understand, and two, they assume we're going to get there. We can do this. I did some work at Yahoo in 06, 07, 08, and in 06 on Cyber Monday, Yahoo Shopping crashed because they didn't have enough capacity in their systems, and they lost basically the whole Christmas season on one day. And so in 07, they were determined to do better, so they tripled capacity. And in 07, it crashed because online shopping went up faster than that. And by 08, they had once again dramatically increased capacity. And yes, it crashed again because they didn't have it. But your customers don't call you up and ask for scalability. They don't call you up and ask for data cleanliness and all these other things unless something breaks. But if we don't do these things, then we are out of business. Particularly in an enterprise space, nobody's excited to hear about why you had an outage. Right? That's when your competitors all call your client, right? Okay, next thing, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we have to do to otherwise stay in business. Test automation, fixing bugs, all the DevOps stuff. Engineering's going to do a bunch of work it must do, right? And then the last slice here, and back to Jana's talk just a little while ago, we have to budget for validation. We have to budget for jobs to be done. We have to budget for investigations, whichever model and flavor you want to call it. If we don't budget for those things, we don't do them. And then at the end of the quarter, we have that same discussion about how lean is something we'd like to be. Oh, it's worth doing. So again, I'm old. As you can see from this, I predate the lean movement, right? Good. But if we don't budget for this stuff, we don't do it. And that's going to get hard in just a minute. Everybody okay? So, that all seems fine. What's the problem? All right, the problem is, in the enterprise space, every enterprise customer wants something special. And most importantly, your CEO knows the name of every enterprise customer that's in your sales pipeline, because there's a small number of big customers, unlike in the consumer space where we have a large number of small customers. And so your CEO is having a discussion with your head of sales every 6 minutes about what it's going to take to close the 3 big deals this quarter, so that he or she doesn't have to tell the board, who's calling every 20 minutes, that we don't know. Right? This is really important. And therefore, the roadmap, if we have one, is the starting point for negotiations. It's not the ending point. Quick definition, a millisecond is the time between when you create a PDF of your roadmap and put the words internal only, not for distribution, and share it with your sales team, and the very first of your enterprise customers gets that document, okay? So, good reason not to have dates on it, but every enterprise customer looks at whatever thing you claim to be a roadmap, looks at that and say, okay, I need that, I need that, I need that, that's good, that's good, that's good. But you don't have that connector to the 15 back version of DB2 that runs on whatever, OS 5. So they all start from the point of view that they need a bunch of things, and the person they share that with very first is your account team. Right? So let's talk about your account team. Again, I love salespeople. I've failed at being a salesperson. They have a whole set of talents I don't have. We hire them, we train them, we reward them, we send them to club in Fiji, Malta, wherever you guys go, right? Because they have this set of skills. They're tremendously persistent. They're optimistic because nobody else would ever be in a sales job, right? Often in the enterprise, they only have a couple or 3 or 4 accounts, only one of which is up for renewal this quarter. So there's really only one account that matters, right? They're tremendously persuasive because that's why we pay them. They position our stuff really well because that's why we pay them and successful. And they're particularly great, sorry, we're losing this. They're particularly great when somebody's a prospect and says no. They're terrifically adept at figuring out who in the organization is a little higher in that organization so they can pitch somebody to say yes, right? That's why we pay them money. If they don't do this, we'll find out in a minute, bad things happen. Now, in fact, I think that's the picture we have here. If anybody, again, knows this movie, Glengarry Glen Ross, right? We have a sales contest tonight. First prize is a Cadillac. Second prize is a set of steak knives. Third prize, you're fired. Okay? If you're in enterprise sales, there's a beautiful 7-minute expletive-laden talk that Alex Baldwin here, you can see him young and gorgeous, tells. Every enterprise salesperson knows this entire speech by heart and uses it as their North Star. Right? If you don't close sales this quarter, dust off the CV, go work somewhere else. It's not forgiving and it's not mushy. It's really straightforward. So therefore, what we know is that every enterprise salesperson is really being paid to subvert the sales plan and the roadmap so that they can get the thing their one customer wants. Because otherwise, they don't get paid. Really important. So again, in the consumer space where you have 400,000 subscribers at $4 a piece, nobody has enough throw weight to matter. In the enterprise where everyone in the company knows the names of the 16 biggest deals, they swing a lot more weight. And the sales team knows it. In fact, the sales team is paid. Okay, quiz, because we just gave you the answer. Enterprise salesperson comes to me as a product manager and says, we need this thing, it's really important, I need to close Deutsche Telekom or Goldman Sachs or whatever it is. And as a good product person, I say, no. I say, hell no. I say, don't let the door hit you on the way out, right? And then we count to about 5, after which that salesperson goes to my boss, right? Because they are experts at escalating things to someone who can say yes. And when the head of product says, no, you're dreaming, don't let the door hit you on the way out, they go to the CEO. So if you are a product manager and you don't recognize this behavior, you're not paying attention. Right? We're not just about algorithms and backlogs and user analysis. We have to be students of human behavior and understand how companies work, especially the ones we work at. Because what I train all of my teams on is As soon as you've told some enterprise sales rep that she can't have that feature, come tell me before my phone rings or my email lights up or my Slack or whatever, because I need to know the reasons before I get called out with no preparation. And then I have to go quick like a bunny and run to the CEO's office before that escalation arrives, right? Because in fact, we're going to take something else out of the plan. Of course we are. Good, let's keep going. So a little bit of language. Again, I believe there's only 2 languages that we deal with, and apologies for everybody who speaks something other than English. The 2 languages are engineering and sales. Okay, and everywhere I go in every language around the world, I hear the same things from both sides. So let's put a few of them up here. Okay, and we're going to focus on some words, the word every, the word only, and the word responsive. Right? Anybody know what these sentences are? Right? If product just understood how important this deal was. Anybody heard this in the last 3 days? It encapsulates magical thinking, and the magical thinking it encapsulates is that there's this bunch of development teams sitting around waiting, idly, sadly, staring into their beer, if that's what they're having here, hoping some enterprise salesperson would show up who wants something, right? Not so much. How about, do we know this one? It's especially useful if you're an enterprise sales rep and only have 3 accounts and there's only one you're working this quarter because they're up for renewal. It's true that every account you talk with wants the same thing, which is the one account. But I instinctively downgrade this, right? How about this one? Do we know this one? Anybody not heard this in the last 3 weeks? Come see me after class. By the way, there's a classic response here. Whenever somebody comes to you and says, can't be that hard, I bet it's only 10 lines of code, the correct thing you should do is you stand up, you take your keyboard, you turn it around, you gently offer the keyboard, say, if you know what those 10 laws are, write them down, otherwise we're going to have to go find out, right? And then the last one, usually, more responsive. This is part of the magical thinking that if we're agile, we have infinite capacity, right? Come on, I need it, it's important. If you were more responsive, I would get it. These are all from the and universe. I know we got stuff to do, and I need one more thing, right? Okay, so now that we've set it all up, let's go back to our pie chart because we're going to play the moving pie chart game. All right, so we saw this before. Here's my investment portfolio as it was at the very beginning of the quarter. We're going to think of this through one quarter because I got this all signed off and we were all approved and everybody's negotiated and it's all good. We're 6 days into the quarter. And then, yes, now our first enterprise sales rep shows up. Thank you very much. And so this is the thing, this is the story we're going to tell. Okay? There's this one thing. By the way, anybody who was on my site about 6 or 8 months ago saw a post of mine that matched this theory up to crack cocaine, which is, we're only going to do this one time. Right? So I believe enterprise sales interrupts are the crack cocaine of software companies. So there's this one thing. This is our theory, because remember, it's only 10 lines of code. Okay. Well, it's really not. So when we actually do the work, we find out that that one thing is a little bigger. Notice the thing we pushed out that got 0 now is everything you have to do with validation, because unlike what Jana was recommending, we actually had some dates on our roadmap. And so everything that's already in production has to be finished because we promised it to someone. And where is this going to come out of? It's going to come out of all of the thinking and all of the validation and all the customer meetings. So just for this one quarter, and it'll never happen again, just for this one quarter, we bumped off all of our validation and forward thinking and dual track agile and whatever else we call it. But of course, we'll recover from that next quarter. Anybody who's joined a health club but didn't go this week knows how this works, which is there's no health benefits to joining a gym if you don't go. This is the equivalent of we promise, next quarter we'll behave. Right? Okay, but the next thing that's happened, what's the next thing that's happened? So some rep on our team or some enterprise team has just closed the biggest, juiciest sale of the quarter in week 2. And so they already know they're going to club and trade out their old cars for faster cars and their smaller houses for larger houses, whatever. And the other thing they did was they took all the other teams out for drinks last night. And you could imagine how that sounded. Basically, a lot of chest thumping around how we're the biggest kids on the block and we closed a big deal. And somewhere in paragraph 11, well, how did you do that? Well, we added a feature that the customer wanted to the purchase order, and we had them sign it. And then we came back, and product and engineering are doing it. Okay? This is called behavior modification. We can be colorful for a minute. I don't know if anybody's ever housebroken a puppy, but if your puppy pees on the carpet, and the next thing you do is give your puppy a treat. Here we are. Okay, so what happens in real life, in real enterprise companies that don't have any controls, is that this one thing gets around, and everybody else realizes that if they got that one little thing for their customer, and now they know that product management is not very useful, so they go right to the CEO, the chart starts to look like this. Right? And you can pick your numbers, but because I spend a lot of time with these companies, when I see a company that's spending more than 15 or 20% on specials and one-offs, and by the way, some of these deals won't close, and some of these customers will never use these features. So we are giving away all the good stuff. So not only have we given away all the validation and all the forward thinking, we've cheated on everything else. And as this gets worse because we've enforced this wrong behavior, it becomes a totally green circle, and then we simply get out of the software product business and become a professional services firm, which is fine if you adjust your pricing and your strategy and everything else. Good, let's keep going. So what do we do? Right, so I've set up a rather ugly problem. Anybody at an enterprise company having this problem? Okay, good. Sometimes it comes from someplace else, but at enterprise it always comes from sales. So what do we do? And we've heard a lot about magic bullets, right? So here's our magic bullet. I'm going to tell you there's no magic bullets, but there are a few things we can do. And sure, I'll tell the war story that goes. I've got time here. I was at a company I was the VP of product and marketing and I think something else, business development, company in 03, 04, 05 that was in Wi-Fi security. Early days for Wi-Fi security. And the head of sales and I were good working friends. We had figured out that we weren't going to throw each other under the tram in the executive staff meeting. We went out to lunch once a week to settle our issues without anybody else having to hear it. And we arrived at the following solution, which is I got, the US, this isn't so hard, I got a shell casing. And I gave it to Stuart. I said, put this in your drawer. This is good for one engineering week on anything you want, once during the quarter, and you get to decide. And that was great. That had a lot of good side effects. Among them was every time one of his salespeople came to me and wanted something, I would say, well, Stuart's got the magic bullet. If you can convince your boss that yours is the only deal that we should use the magic bullet on, I'll do it, whatever it is, if it fits. Right? The other thing that was important about the physical token was because we used it in week 2 of the quarter. In week 3 of the quarter, when he reached into his desk to get it again, turns out I had it. And so having a physical token was one way to keep score. But in general, what we want is very visible scorekeeping. There's a tremendous recency bias in the heads of every one of your executives except product and engineering that we haven't done this yet this quarter, that we haven't given it all away. We've forgotten about the deals we did. Once we sign the deal, it's forgotten, we move on. Of course, engineering and product and support have to build it and deliver it. But the rest of the executive team is wiped clean, memory gone. And so I'm always keeping a running list of everything that came in. And by the way, everything we kicked out of the plan to make room for the thing that came in. Because by tomorrow they've forgotten and they've asked me for the new thing. And I take out the list and say, well, okay, we gave this away. And pretty soon we see that we're not delivering anything we planned on this quarter. But we are delivering lots of stuff, so it undercuts the, you guys never give me anything. We're back to you never give me what I want, right? And so an allocation for specials is good sometimes. And I always try to be really, really good friends with the head of sales, again, who out-earns me by 2x or 3x, because I can't do this alone. If sales really wants to put it to engineering and product, that's what happens. So how do we make good friends? How do we have working relationships? Because it's not enough to have an algorithm that tells us what the highest ROI is among the feature list if we're never going to build any of them, right? And then one last thing, and you guys may not know this, but we'll say it anyway. So this is true. Salespeople do what we pay them to do, not what we want them to do. This is true everywhere. One of the most important skills of any serious salesperson is on the very first day of the quarter, they open up their compensation plan and they figure out how to hit their number with the least amount of work and or how to exceed with the least amount of work. So for instance, if we've got a really well-established product that sells really well and people renew and it's making everybody commission, and we've introduced a few new products, what will always happen with one or two exceptions is none of our sales reps will sell the new product because they don't need to, because they can hit their number on the old product, and it takes time and energy to learn new stuff, right? Are we surprised? We shouldn't be. Are we upset? Maybe. But I think of this as one of the ways we help steer our sales team is, as the head of product, I sit down with the head of sales early on, and we might do some tweaks to the compensation plan. So experiment, right? What if we delayed half of the commission they get until customers achieve real value and the software is installed and working? Okay, that might change some of the promises that our sales team makes about things we don't have and don't work, right? Just saying, right? How about if we comped our sales teams on standard software licenses, but anything that's special or different, not only don't we comp them, let's make it a minus 100% commission. So if you sell a €100,000 deal and 50,000 of that is straight license and 50,000 is specials, we don't pay you at all, right? You would see within moments that our sales team has started to change its behavior because we've applied it to the place that they care about. Whereas the product manager who spends a lot of time haranguing sales about selling the new product, not so interesting. How about, again, we have a bunch of new products. Maybe we pay extra for the cross-sell to the new product. Maybe you're not allowed to get to 100% commission until you've sold one each of our new products, right? This is a systematic way of thinking about it instead of being angry at our salespeople, right? And if we look at the comp or reward or bonus systems for each of the functional groups we work with, I think we often discover it's not that they may dislike me, but that's not why they're acting the way they're acting. They're acting the way they're acting because we are paying and rewarding them to do a thing that's not what I want them to do. And if I want it to change, we've got to hit the highlights here. Okay, good. So last bit here, in case anybody misses it. Do you guys have these here, takeaway containers? Right, so here's our takeaways. Look for patterns. This is about human behavior. This is about reward systems. This is how organizations work. It's not enough as product managers that we have the best ordering on our backlog and we have the best stories and specs and epics and whatever we're using and jobs to be done, because much of the company, sorry to say, doesn't care, right? We have to understand what the patterns are in our company, and if you're the head of product, you spend a lot of time engineering those relationships and processes so we get the right thing done. Good. I will tell you the prioritization conflict, it's not only inevitable, it's irreconcilable. My support team will always want us to spend 100% on fixing bugs. And our engineering team will always want us to spend 100% on tech debt reduction and new experiments for, bigger databases. And our sales team will always come at us for one-off special things, right? And so we have to serve the whole by turning some of it away in each category. And then last, I think, almost last, as a product leader or a senior product manager, you have to think about the aggregate impact of what's going on. It's easy in the heat of the moment to do one little thing for one little customer one time, but we have to understand the behaviors that drives and the reward systems that drives, and think about the aggregate impact of what's going on. I do this exercise with some of my teams. We open up last quarter's roadmap, if we have such a thing, and we mark all the things we did and didn't do, and then we wrote down what we actually shipped. And often that pie is 75% surprises. Good. And then the last one, we need to get our other functional leaders, the folks in sales and marketing and operations and engineering, have to play along. We can't be sitting by ourselves being the smartest kids in the room. Nobody cares that we're smartest. By the way, everybody on your engineering team is smarter than you. We know this because we asked them and they told us, right? Use them, right? They're there. Good. So there's our, our trade-offs, and we really want to enlist our functional partners to understand and help make trade-offs with us, because without them, we just get undercut and undersold, and I've been fired a few times, but not over this. Good. Last thing, I'll back up in a second. This is how to find me. For those of you who don't know, the 27 million people in the former Soviet states with my last name didn't buy the domain, because I bought it in 1993 before any of those folks were on the net. So I get to have my name as my domain. There's 18 years of blog posts up there for anybody who didn't get there. Good. Let me back up. Here's our takeaways. We are 20 seconds to go. All right. Done. Thank you.